In 1969, 29-year-old Green Beret Captain Al Kittredge stood on the edge of the Mekong Delta, where the dense jungle met rice paddies near the border with Cambodia. His Special Forces Operational Detachment, A414, set near a small hamlet called Thon Tree. It was a CIA-affiliated team running top-secret ops into Cambodia spying on enemy troop movement. Al, battle-hardened and decorated, was no stranger to the chaos of war. But this new assignment felt different, a raw challenge that would test his leadership to its limits. His team respected him. They knew he was a hands-on commander, the kind who didn't just bark orders from headquarters but personally led missions outside the wire. He once exposed himself to enemy fire in order to rescue and carry a wounded civilian soldier to safety. Al's presence bolstered their confidence, even in this unforgiving terrain. But fate wasted no time. Barely acclimated to the camp, Al faced his first trial. One of his new men, Camo Chief Terry McIntosh, sprung an ambush on the Viet Cong before sunrise. He operated 2 miles away from the forward operating base, and the radio link had failed. Desperate for mortar support, McIntosh's situation hung in the balance. Specialist Mesa, stationed at the forward operating base, watched the chaos unfold through tracers and exploding rockets. Fear gnawed at him. He had no contact with McIntosh. Had McIntosh been wounded, or worse? He urgently contacted Al at base camp, describing the dire circumstances. "When was the last time you heard from Mac?" Al asked, his voice steady but urgent. "When he gave me coordinates trained on a tree line at the border," Mesa replied, anxiety tainting his words. Al's mind raced. Could he leave one of his men in danger? No, he had to act. He knew his team was experienced. If Mac was alive, he'd find cover. Al made a fateful decision. He ordered Mesa to unleash a barrage of mortar rounds on the last coordinates McIntosh had relayed. The night sky erupted as explosions tore through the tree line, eliminating the enemy patrol. The action ceased. The weary team returned to the forward operating base unharmed. It was Al's immediate but risky decision that saved them from an overwhelming Viet Cong force. Al shared the after-action report with Captain Bob Marasco, the commander of Project Gamma, operating out of Thon Tree. Marasco was responsible for the interpreter. The decision had weighed heavily on Al. There was something strange about the incident. It was more than just a routine patrol gone wrong. It marked the beginning of the Green Beret affair. Suspicion fell on Mac's Vietnamese interpreter Tai Phoc Chuyen, who had acted strangely during the ambush. The Terp refused to open fire on the enemy, never once discharging his weapon. Plus, the radio was tampered with just before contact was made with the VC unit. Circumstantial evidence perhaps, but enough to arouse suspicion. Marasco agreed and pulled Chuyen from the team. Fate, however, had other plans. Chuyen returned by invitation only to face arrest and execution by Captain Marasco after additional evidence surfaced. Al's gut feeling was right. The Terp was a double agent. CIA handlers instructed Marasco to eliminate Chuyen. Al inherited more than he bargained for when he accepted command of A414 in Thon Tree, a tangled web of loyalty, courage, and betrayal. His small team operating deep within the Delta would soon make international headlines when the execution is exposed. The Green Beret affair would take on a life of its own and be forever etched in military history. And so, amidst the sweltering jungles and echoing gunfire, Captain Albert Kittredge learned that leadership wasn't just about strategy and tactics, it was about making split-second decisions that could alter lives forever. Thon Tree was a place where duty collided with humanity, and where the line between friend and foe blurred in the haze of war. This was just the beginning. Al met tomorrow with a determined will to keep his area of operation free from enemy movement, and to protect his team along with innocent civilians. Days blurred into weeks, and Captain Al Kittredge found himself immersed in the relentless rhythm of war. His Special Forces Operational Detachment, A414, operated near the Cambodia border, a volatile region where the jungle swallowed secrets and defiance danced with danger. The brass back in Washington whispered warnings, "Stay out of Cambodia, it'll be an international scandal." But Al knew better. Project Gamma was a covert operation under command of Captain Marasco. It collaborated with indigenous agents deep inside Cambodian territory. Al assisted Marasco on an as-needed basis. Politics be damned. Sometimes duty demanded more than red tape allowed. Sometimes it took a green beret to confirm reports. One evening, chaos erupted. A local civilian soldier burst into camp, eyes wide with terror. "Big fight, many dead," he shouted. Al's second-in-command, Lieutenant Will Williams, and Staff Sergeant Frank Midlill led a patrol that walked into an ambush. The jungle swallowed them whole, leaving behind a trail of blood and confusion. Al wasted no time. He alerted his commo chief, Sergeant McIntosh, and hurriedly arranged for helicopters to pick them up from the nearby Makwa base. The chopper carried them to the heart of the conflict with hearts beating like a drum. Amidst the tangled foliage, Al discovered the grim truth. Lieutenant Williams was missing, and Sergeant Midlill was wounded. The troops staggered, disarrayed like broken chess pieces on a chaotic board. First priority, get Midlill back to Thon Tree for medical attention. Al's mind raced as he brought order to the chaos. Then came the search for Lieutenant Williams, a desperate quest through the shadows. With weapons on ready, expecting a clash, Al searched with tenacity but without result. The night thickened, and fear clung to the air like humidity. 7 lives lost, others wounded. The cost of war weighed heavily. Al policed up dead bodies while Sergeant McIntosh guided overhead support. Al's instincts kicked in. He reorganized the remaining troops, each movement deliberate. Darkness crept, and the Viet Cong, like phantoms, hovered just beyond sight. Suddenly, Lieutenant Williams crawled back into the perimeter, battered but alive. Al's relief was palpable. The lieutenant had survived, hugging the earth until the enemy moved on. Midlill and Williams boarded a chopper bound for Thon Tree. The VC, perhaps sated by their grim harvest, retreated into the jungle. Al stayed behind, policing up dropped weapons, a macabre task in the moonlight. The night had been a symphony of uncertainty, bravery, and death. Al's only prayer, get his men home safely. As the chopper blades whirred, carrying the wounded and the weary, Al stood on that blood-soaked ground. The jungle whispered secrets, and he wondered how many more nights like this awaited him. But for now, survival was victory, and hope clung stubbornly to the edges of despair. Get them home, Al thought, watching the chopper vanish into the night. That's all I can hope for. And so, Captain Al Kittredge, leader, survivor, and keeper of shadows, faced another dawn in the heart of a war that consumed both body and soul. Captain Al Kittredge counted down the days. His rotation off the team loomed, but he knew he'd be back. Perhaps not here, not in this exact spot near the Cambodian border, but the jungle had a way of pulling you back. It whispered secrets and it listened. Before his departure, one final mission beckoned, a debt to settle. The local Vietnamese Special Forces commander Captain Dim nursed a hunger for revenge. The recent ambush had claimed several of his men, and Dim's resolve burned hotter than the equatorial sun. Al and Dim had forged a bond, a brotherhood born in the crucible of war. Now, fate offered them a chance to strike back. Intel surfaced. The enemy, the same team that had bloodied Dim's troops, lurked in a village just across the border in Cambodia. The village wasn't clandestine, it sat there, seemingly peaceful. Team members Sergeants Hamby and McIntosh had observed it before, a retreat for Viet Cong who struck targets in Nam and then melted across the line. Civilians populated the village, women, children, and perhaps even sympathizers. Harmless, they thought, harmless to American and Ally lives. Dim's anger simmered. He turned to Al, eyes aflame. "Go with me," he said. Al didn't hesitate. 3 weeks remained in his tour, but unfinished business gnawed at him. His duty wasn't done. So, side by side, they assembled a last search and destroy mission. Dim marshaled 2 companies of troops. Al stood by his side, ready. He told his commo chief, Sergeant McIntosh, to gear up and prepare for action. They deployed to the border, eyes scanning the horizon. Al raised his binoculars and shock coursed through him. The village had transformed. "This is a VC training camp now," he whispered to Sergeant McIntosh. The evidence was stark-armed males, few women or mamasans, and no children. Had they been relocated? Al's mind raced. The VC coveted this place. A training center, a staging ground. Men practiced disassembling and reassembling weapons. Others marched in drills, their boots pounding the earth like war drums. Hamby and McIntosh hadn't seen this previously, observing the village. The village had metamorphosed, an active enemy hive. Dim's resolve hardened. Payback loomed. They waited, shadows in the foliage, as the sun dipped low. By late afternoon, the VC's activity waned. They prepared to settle into the night. Al wondered what Dim would choose. Legal options were non-existent, they stood on Cambodian soil. The enemy trained here so close yet untouchable. But soldiers had their own code. As dusk painted the sky, Dim's command echoed. Fire! Mortars screamed, rifles spat fire. The jungle trembled as rounds struck the village. Al hugged the ground and expended his ammo. And then, silence. Dim ordered retreat, back into Vietnam. The troops escaped unharmed, leaving behind a scorched battlefield. That night, they set up camp, adrenaline still coursing. Recon ambush patrols fanned out. The VC, like vengeful ghosts, followed. They tried to escalate, but outnumbered, they withdrew into Cambodia's shadows. Al stared into the darkness, knowing this was his last dance with the jungle. The debt settled, but the jungle's whispers lingered. He'd be back. Another team, another location. The war had etched its mark and Al carried it with him. A silent pact with the ghosts of Thon Tree. Captain Al Kittredge stood on the precipice of departure. 12 months of danger, sacrifice, and brotherhood had etched lines on his face, lines that whispered secrets only the jungle understood. His team, A414, had become his family, bound by shared trials and the weight of their mission. The recent cross-border incursion, the one that had silenced the enemy training camp, left Al with mixed emotions. Striking those cutthroat murderers felt right. They'd harmed countless innocents. Al's purpose was clear, to stop callous men and save lives. But now, as he returned to Thon Tree, he faced a choice. Reporting the incursion to superiors? Al shook his head. Some things were better left to silence. His official report labeled it a routine patrol, a walk in the sun. The truth, however, lingered in the shadows, the memory of mortar fire, the scent of scorched earth. And then came the rotation. Home beckoned, but Al's soul carried the weight of survival. July 14th, the chopper's blades whirred, lifting him away from the jungle's embrace. Farewells echoed, a chorus of brothers who'd shared foxholes, laughter, and fear. Al's heart clenched, he'd miss them, even as he yearned for home. But fate, that fickle mistress, had other plans. The Cambodian enemy seethed with revenge. Intel had dried up since the double agent's disappearance, and A414 was a thorn in their side. Now, the VC planned to strike Thon Tree twice, July 18th and 24th. Al missed a date with death by a cat's whisker. His replacement, Captain Geneseo, untested but eager, stepped into the breach. Thon Tree was attacked a second time. A search was on for the Viet Cong pulling back to Cambodia. The chopper that carried Geneseo on the 24th would never return. It plummeted, claiming lives. The B-team commander, Colonel Beck, Captain Dim, and Al's replacement, Geneseo. Al's chest tightened. More of his friends were dead, including the helicopter crew. Survivor's guilt gnawed at him. It could have been me, he whispered to the night. The jungle listened, its ancient leaves rustling secrets. Gratefulness warred with remorse. He'd move on, but Thon Tree's ghosts clung to him, the ones he'd lost, and the ones he'd saved. Watch out, Vietnam, Al vowed silently. I'll be back. The jungle nodded, its shadows conspiring. Al Kittredge, the survivor, the silent witness, had etched his name into the land, and the jungle, ever patient, awaited his return.